Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio.
Welcome, dear friends, to Kardec Radio and the Spiritist Society of Virginia in our Friday's Inspirational Studies, Inspirational Talks. Today we're going to talk about the Spiritist Strength. There's much for us to learn. There's much for us to share with you. But before we begin it, we want to begin it with a message to bring us to this moment, because our heads are everywhere and elsewhere, but we need to cherish the moment that we are spending together and open our hearts to the presence of the good spirits here. Let us then together listen to a message by Emmanuel that Carol is going to read for us.
Thank you, dear Vanessa. Good evening, friends. Tonight we will read message 18 of the book Our Daily Bread by Emmanuel through Chico Xavier. The message is entitled Trials by Fire. And the fire will test what each one's work is. Paul to the Corinthians 3:13. The mechanized industry of modern times refers frequently to trials by fire for testing the strength of its products. As we ponder this fact, let us remember that the gospel also referred to such trials almost 20 centuries ago with respect to spiritual attainments. In writing to the Corinthians, Paul imagines human workers building upon a single foundation, Jesus Christ, with individuals materializing their own accomplishments in conformity with their evolutionary resources. Each and every disciple, however, must proceed with their own particular endeavor, knowing that times of struggle will leave them exposed so that their qualities may be correctly evaluated. The perfecting of the world in its material aspect can furnish an image of the importance of such meaningful evaluations. The earth is replete with riches, positions, standards, and minds that cannot withstand trials by fire. The moment they are exposed to purifying processes, they precipitately descend the steps of misery, ruin, and decadence. In the service of Christ, it is also just for his followers to expect their own personal capabilities to be tested when the time comes. Character, love, faith, patience, hope, and hope represent achievements for the life eternal, accomplished by individuals with the holy assistance of the Master. But all disciples must expect experiences which, at the right time, will try their spiritual character.
Now we ask our dear friend Luciana to join us in a prayer, being a prayer the moment that we seal our togetherness for protection, inspiration, and even spiritual treatment.
So let us all now pray together by closing our eyes. Dear Mother, dear Father God, dear mentors of Kardec Radio and the Spirit Society of Virginia, We are very thankful and have so much joy in our hearts for this blessed opportunity for being together tonight, learning and experiencing your love towards each one of us. Dear mentors, dear loving Master, we feel the love that is being sent to us. And we ask you that throughout this study session, our hearts, our mind, our ear, and our eyes can see and feel and listen the good news, learning about your gospel, and may all the teachings that we receive tonight can guide us and help us throughout this reincarnation so we can progress as a spirit, an eternal spirit that we are. So with your permission, dear mentors, Master Jesus, our Creator God, we would like to open this session of tonight, and so be it.
Dear friends, tonight we're called to go through a journey through the Gospel according to Spiritism by Kardec. There's no better time on earth to go to the main reference of our lives. Many people are not living well nowadays because their main reference is not God. What can we do? What can we be without God? When we find God, life is joyful. Yes, we're going to cry sometimes. We're going to be upset or angry. We're going to go through the struggles of our daily lives, but we are not going to go desperate. We're not going to surrender to temptations. We're going to resist. And most of all, we're going to do the good. When we find God, we want to do the good. We want to be good. And how do we know all of it? Through the Spiritist understanding. The Spiritist view brings us a totally new life. It changes us completely. We no longer are whom we've been. We change ourselves. And it's so good when people look at us, people who knew us like 20, 30, or some more years ago, and say, oh, you've changed. Thank God, hopefully for the better. Hopefully the time we discarnate and go back to our spiritual home, because it is a home. Remember, the spiritual realm is a home. When we go back to our spiritual home, it may be joyful, a graduation time when we get back knowing that we have passed that year in our school of the earth. Well, I'm talking about this, but behind me, besides Kardec, we have here someone that really exemplifies to us the very strength of Spiritism. We want to share with you a little bit of the story of Eurípides Barçanufo. He is the one that created the first Spiritist school on earth in the city of Sacramento, in the state of Minas Gerais, in Brazil. Minas Gerais is the neighboring state with São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, in the southeast of Brazil. And Eurípides Barçanufo used to be Catholic, very devoted. And one day, he has come to know, since he was born at the end of the 19th century, at some point in his adulthood, he has come to know that his uncle, who was very influential in his life, his uncle became a Spiritist. And at that time, it was shocking. It really created a lot of dissensions. Eurípides Barçanufo could not understand it. One day, his uncle very wisely, like someone who really understands that being a Spiritist is beyond explanations. It's more a feeling. It's more from within than from without. He handed Eurípides Barçanufo a book, The Book After Death, by Leon Denis, the French disciple of Allan Kardec. They say that Eurípides Barçanufo read it in one night, at candlelight. He couldn't drop the book, and yet he wanted to further understand. Everything made sense to him, and he came to one of their mediumistic meetings in a farm with his uncle. He didn't announce he was there. He was on the back of the room, respectfully observing everything, but deep inside, Eurípides Barçanufo had this question in his mind. Would by any chance John the Evangelist come and speak in this meeting through the most illiterate medium at this meeting? He thought in the back of his mind. And he did so because he had deep appreciation for the works of John the Evangelist. And to his surprise, John the Evangelist actually came through the very medium who was the most illiterate of them all and spoke in answer to his mental question. He was surprised, but deeply impacted by the depth of the message. From then on, we know that Eurípides Barçanufo had the courage to begin a new life. Many people didn't understand. It was quite a challenge, but he transformed not only his life, neither only the life of his family, but also the life of the city and all of our lives. We have been impacted to date by him. Chico Xavier was born in 1910, 8 years before Eurípides Barçanufo discarnated during the Spanish flu. And Chico Xavier revealed to many that Eurípides Barçanufo is the most complete and evolved spiritist that has ever reincarnated on earth. A life that is worthwhile knowing about. If you go to YouTube and you type in his name, there is a movie that was put together by, it's a documentary by Versátil Editora, and they have captions in English. It's worthwhile getting to know more about someone who is deeply connected to all of our hearts, who cares for us and is today helping these efforts of love in action on earth. The Spiritist authority, the Spiritist strength is such that it changed the life of Eurípides Barçanufo. But not only his. We want to understand more. So now, as we invite everyone to walk into the understanding of why is Spiritism so impacting and so convincing, two books come at first in our minds. The Gospel According to Spiritism, published in 1864, and the book Genesis, published in 1868. And it says to us about the universal control of the Spirit's teachings. Kardec, when publishing this phenomenal book, The Gospel According to Spiritism, at a time when science and religion were totally divorced, not talking to each other, not even a chance of seeing one another, Kardec dared to bring this Gospel According to Spiritism, prefacing it and bringing the introduction, talking about the alliance of science and religion and talking about the universality of the teachings that we're studying. That's where the strength of Spiritism resides. It's not only us, the ideas are spread out in the world. Let us just go back a little bit as we use the word authority in Kardec's book, The Gospel According to Spiritism. We want to go through some of the synonyms. Authority here is meant for a convincing force, for an influence, for having credit. As Kardec says in the introduction of the Gospel According to Spiritism, no one in this world would make the ill-founded claim of possessing the absolute truth by him or herself. Friends, you and I know that what we are reading in these books are ideas that can be encountered since ancient times with different names. The only difference is that Kardec is masterful when he frames all this work in a unique way that clarifies everything, puts all the pieces of the puzzle together. We no longer need to go elsewhere. Everything is encountered here. He says to us, what characterizes the Spiritist revelation is its divine origin and the initiative of the spirits, making its compilation the result of the work of humanity. Of course, the gospel is here, but it goes hand in hand with the book Genesis chapter 1. We see chapter 1 in the Genesis in the introduction of the Gospel According to Spiritism, matching the same understanding that what we are learning came from divine inspiration, but you and I, all the humanity on earth, partake in this work, not only in the past, but to date. We can still help expanding it because it's a science. Kardec continues by reminding us that this work is the result of a natural mechanism that strengthens it, our togetherness, the law of society. If the spirits who have revealed Spiritism had manifested to only one person, nothing would guarantee its origin, for it would be necessary to believe the word of whomever stated that he or she had received their teachings. So here we are. Everything we are reading in these books and studying together, we are seeing everywhere and elsewhere. For almost 11 years, Kardec Radio has been bringing several non-spiritist thinkers. And I say non, quote unquote, because it doesn't matter the label. But they write books, they research, and they say exactly the same thing. Telling us that what we know can be verified in different parts of the world, men and women, people of different races, different age groups, different social status, different educational status, and we are all talking the same language. Just to give us an idea about the power of the Spiritist teachings, this is a poster that we put together back in 2008, preparing for the second United States Spiritist Council in a poster presentation. And when we were putting it together, we observed that in the Gospel according to Spiritism itself, just the book, we encounter 48 communicating spirits delivering messages there. Those are many. We have here just a few. For example, a French writer, Delphine de Girardin. Then we find a German physician, Samuel Hahnemann. Then we're going to find an important Christian figure, St. Augustine. Then messages by Paul of Tarsus, by a spirit friend that nowadays we know is Joanna de Angelis, the spirit mentor of Divaldo Franco. Then a French Roman Catholic theologian, poet, and writer, Francois Fenelon. Then we have a French mathematician, physicist, religious philosopher, Blaise Pascal. The King of France, St. Louis, John the Evangelist, one of Jesus' disciples. Even Emmanuel, the very Emmanuel, whom we know, the mentor of Chico Xavier, in some messages also in this book, The Gospel According to Spiritism. Saint Vincent de Paul, French priest, and many others. What we are telling everyone here is that when we read these books, they don't come from one mind. They don't come from one person in one corner of the world, though we know the world has no corners because it's round, but it doesn't come from one single mind. It comes from several minds through several mediums compiled by an editor-in-chief, by the codifier Allan Kardec. This is telling us about the power of concordance. The only true guarantee, says Kardec, the only true guarantee for Spirit's teachings is the overall agreement amongst revelations made spontaneously through a large number of mediums, unknown to one another, and in several places. This is exactly how it all happened and still happens to date. We read many books of people who are not Spiritists, and even those who are Spiritists, and we see the concordance. And there's great power in that. And for those who see it, we easily embrace it, understanding that only the truth can be replicated at different times through different people in different places of the earth. That's a scientific principle. When we do anything in science, this concordance gives power to what was discovered. Spiritism is also a discovery, a revelation. So Kardec is bringing to us that the strength of Spiritism, its authority, its convincing force, comes also from its concordance. One that will also tell us that no matter who we are, we can all speak about it. He says in the introduction of the Gospel according to Spiritism, the law of equality, God willed for the new revelation to reach humanity through the quickest and most authentic way possible. That is why God has entrusted the spirits with taking it from one pole to the other and manifesting themselves everywhere without giving anyone the exclusive privilege of hearing their word. That's so true that Chico Xavier later came to the scenario of the Spiritist teachings. He only had the fourth grade in school, and yet he became the most renowned Spiritist medium this far. It doesn't matter if you were born in France or in Brazil, if I know this person or that person, it doesn't matter. We are all equal. We all have access to it. We can all be instruments of it. We can all help out. Spiritism, says Kardec, has no nationality. And this is so important because nowadays, many people still say, oh, it's Brazil. There are lots of spiritists in Brazil. It's the most spiritist country in the world. For now. For now. Because Spiritism is not Brazilian. And the Brazilians do not have ownership of Brazil. And we have no privileges over it. Everyone is capable of understanding it, of disseminating it, of embracing it, and nobody owns it. You do not need to ask permission of anyone to start your study group wherever you want, however you want, because Spiritism is not controlled by anyone but God. Spiritism is freely available to everyone, and everybody is encouraged to walk this journey as they wish, because Spiritism is not rooted into a nation. Kardec says these very words in the introduction of the Gospel according to Spiritism. Spiritism has no nationality. It lies outside all particular creeds and has not been imposed by any class of society, since any person may receive instruction from his or her relatives and friends from beyond the grave. It had to be this way so that it could call humanity to fraternity. If it had not placed itself on neutral ground, it would have maintained dissensions instead of placating them. So, friends, you see how simple Kardec speaks to us. You and I can receive instructions from those who come from the beyond. As a medium myself, I'm always surprised when people tell me, or when they are surprised that we hear spirits, that we talk to spirits, that spirits talk to us, that we see spirits, that they write through us. It's so natural. Kardec says this in the Medium's book. Spiritism is not supernatural. None of these spirit phenomena are. Everything is in the rules and the laws of life. Oh, okay, people may not understand it as is, but we know it. And we treat it as natural as it is. If I am at a cafe and I see a spirit, big deal, right? We're spirits too. The only difference is that I have a physical body and they don't, but they have a spiritual body like we do. They are spirits like we are, and that's the essence. So I'm sharing this with you because I can never forget once when I was still living in Baltimore, Maryland, coming to the study groups here, the Spiritist Society of Virginia, when we were at its very beginnings. the workshops at Tyson's Corner. I was with a friend, and we used to come very early because we understand that this is so important. We need to be there not only on time, but even before time when we are organizing things. But it was very early. And we stopped by at Barnes and Noble. We were there with our laptops, working on something, and suddenly, I spirit touches my shoulder. I look at this man, and he says, you want to see something? And I said, sure. So I told my friend, wait up. I went to one of the rows of many books, the shelves, and he says, look at this. I saw. There were many books, but I could only see one. Thoughts are things. And then I was intrigued. I looked at the book and I said to myself, can't be possible. Who wrote this book? Can't be Andre Luis. I've never heard of this book before. Who wrote this? And then I saw Prentice Mulford. Who is this Prentice Mulford? And I looked at him, he smiled. I said, who is this? He says, keep looking. Then I look at the back of the book, the cover, and I saw a picture and the description. I look at the picture, look at him, I look at him, I look at the picture, I say, oh, it's you. He says, yes, it's me. I have never heard of you. And then we talked. He said, okay, from now on you will. He was very jovial. I started reading the book, a book that I would recommend to everybody because this book came way before Spiritism, way before Kardec, Andre Luis books that talk about thoughts and thoughts being things, or even Emmanuel talking in 1958. Prentice Mulford came way before all of it. And when we read about it, when we read his book, it's fascinating. So these teachings have no nationality. Prentice Mulford was a forerunner of Spiritism, but the Spiritist ideas are universally controlled. They have come in all lands since ancient times. Nobody is going to be without the opportunity of understanding it or even embracing it. In the book, the Spirit's book that started it all, 1857, in the very preface that Kardec called the detailed preference prolegomena, he describes to us the spirits announce that the times marked by providence for a universal manifestation have arrived, and that being the ministers of God and the agents of his will, their mission is to instruct and enlighten humanity, opening a new era for the regeneration of humanity. Next week, our friend Leo Vieira from Baltimore, from the Spiritist Society of Baltimore, will be here with us talking about this very matter, the new era. For now, you and I will get to know that these spirits have not come to entertain us. They have come to lead us into a new beginning, a regeneration within. But who are these spirits that Kardec is saying? Who are they? And you know, this is a picture from the movie Kardec. You can watch it in Netflix, and it's fascinating. Kardec says in the Prolegomena, in the number of spirits who contributed to the execution of this work, many are said to have lived at different times on earth, where they preached and practiced virtue and wisdom. Others, by their names, do not belong to any celebrity, whose memory history preserves, but whose elevation is attested by the purity of their teachings and the union in which they find themselves with those who use venerated names. So, who are these spirits? They are those whom we have seen, some of those. I've showed you the pictures: Delphine de Regeradan, John the Evangelist, etc., etc. Some of them we know, others we don't know. But what we know is that the message is elevated, is pure. Good spirits don't write much. They write briefly, but they write surely, and they go straight to the point of what we need. They are always leading us to the good. They are never frivolous, never trivial. If you want to know to distinguish more the language of superior and inferior spirits, the Medium's book has a particular chapter on identity of the spirits. Now, Kardec, at the end of this preface in the Spirit's book, he delivers some names. Who belonged to these efforts? John the Evangelist, St. Augustine, St. Vincent de Paul, St. Louis, the Spirit of Truth, Socrates, Plato, Fenelon, Benjamin Franklin, Swedenborg, and many others. Because of these names, many people may gravitate to understand it. But most important is not the name, it's the message. A message that has come since Kardec's time, but was crowned by Chico Xavier. In this picture, you see at the very head of the table Chico Xavier, the equipment that was used at his time to record messages from the spirits. In this drawing, we have a mediumistic meeting and some of the illuminated spirits that used to be there. Here we have Dr. Bezerra de Menezes on the left, May, who was the spirit director of the meeting in a center that exists to date in the city of Pedro Leopoldo, in the state of Minas Gerais, Brazil. Emmanuel to the right, and then this is André Luiz, the brother of Chico Xavier, and actually André Luiz, the spirit doctor. Talking to Geraldo Lemos Neto, one of the hosts at Kardec Radio, we were talking about how many communicating spirits possibly have come through Chico Xavier during his 75 years of active mediumship. So our math is to date. He said they're going to do a deeper research on this, but for now, in 75 years of active mediumship, in average 3 meetings per week, 12 messages were delivered per meeting. He got an average of 49,000 spirits. Can you imagine? He's the vessel through which these thousands of communicating spirits came through. It's a phenomenon. And when we study every morning at the morning prayer, messages that are delivered through Chico Xavier, for years we have been doing this at Kardec Radio. And no matter which book, which author, the message is consistent, coherent, and it brings to us this unity that cannot be perchance. Again, bringing to us the strength of the Spiritist teachings. Now, Kardec is going to say the greatest strength in Spiritism comes through the use of reasoning. The first test, says Kardec, is undoubtedly that of reason, to which it is necessary to submit without exception everything that comes from spirits. Any theory in obvious contradiction to common sense, strict logic, and the hard evidence that one possesses, despite any respectable name that may have signed the communication, must be rejected. He talks about that in the introduction of the Gospel according to Spiritism, telling us that faith, to be unshakable, needs to be reasoned. Think about it. I was talking to someone the other day, and I said, well, if you feel so connected to your house, think about one day you're not going to be in this house. You're going to go back to the spiritual realm. Don't you want to help with your feelings of attachment to your house? It's a question that I ask many people, because reasoning will lead us to an answer, which is the truth. Once we know the truth, we make a choice. Either this choice is going to be made on this new pattern that is being pointed out, or in old habits, old conditionings. It's our choice. But we need to seek the truth. And reasoning, undoubtedly, will lead us into that, especially when we work in a group. Because sometimes when we are by ourselves, we don't reason well. That's why we need to humble ourselves and work in a group, because the people who are with us will help one another, making sure that we are healthily working towards the light. And that's why Kardec crowned this book in his works as the codifier and the editor-in-chief, reminding us of the power of the Spiritist teachings. Its convincing force, its authority does not reside in Kardec, in his reasoning, but in our reasoning, in our own verification that these teachings are not new and they have not come through one person in one part of the world, but since ancient times, throughout many people, many mediums, many minds, and to date, Spiritism is spreading to the world. Those who are outside, they don't know. But those who are working in the harvest of Spiritism, we are seeing this exponential growth thanks to the internet, thanks to social media. So friends, now we're going to put a pause to allow ourselves to discuss a little more about this strength of Spiritism that goes beyond, much further than just our group in Virginia or in Florida or in California or in wherever we are. These teachings are everywhere and elsewhere. So we want to call our friends who are here so we can together bring the feelings of these words by Kardec. Right? Carol.
Yes, Vanessa. The universality of the teachings that Kardec brings allows for us to understand God's justice more clearly, because we understand that everything that takes place in our lives is a result of God's mercy. In the Gospel according to Spiritism, for instance, we learn that there are present and past consequences to our suffering, and we practice emotional and spiritual intelligence using our reasoning by learning that we can choose to either, quote, suffer well or suffer badly. And it's beautiful how Kardec's works complement each other perfectly, because if we go, for instance, to the Heaven and Hell book, we see that Kardec illustrates the justice of God with actual cases of spirit communication. And if we see, for instance, one of our preferred cases personally, that of Samuel Philippe, using his reasoning, he understands why he experienced challenges in his life. And by understanding why through reasoning, he finds immense strength that allows for him to evolve spiritually. So through reasoning, we find strength, we find the good, and we come to understand God's justice, which presents itself in the form of love always.
Thank you, Carol. Daisy.
Vanessa, it's so beautiful to talk about Spiritism and to remember that Jesus came and he said, you know, I will bring you one day the promised consoler that you tell you much more than I can, and then will stay with you for, immortality. And that is the beauty, that's the Spiritism, right? The promised consoler by Jesus. So as our guiding model, he came, he taught us through more than words, his example, but he said, there's so much I can tell you, right? But I will send you the promised consoler. And as you said, it's so beautiful to see that we can clearly see how spiritism it's gonna continue on through immortality, because through through science, through other researchers across the world in different culture languages, we see that they are bringing just more things to strengthen the knowledge that we already have through spiritism. So we can see how it is growing, it is becomes stronger and stronger. It might not have the label spiritism everywhere, but we see the spiritist teachings behind it, in how we are getting to really think and knowing about ourselves, because it starts by knowing of ourselves, applying to ourselves, and then also sharing with others. So it gives us that strength, like has the promised consoler. And it's so beautiful to see all the books by Kardec. But if we have any questions, we can go to the Spiritist book and we'll find the answer there. There will be an answer to our question there. So Kardec has truly this wonderful educator, and it's a masterpiece for all of us, because the way he compiled that information in such an easy way for us to study, it's incredible. So spiritism is truly a light in our lives and guides our pathway.
You're right, Daisy. Luciana.
It's so beautiful, the teachings that we received. And it's always like in our journey as we evolve as a spirit, when we are trying to find out the answers that is always in our mind, in our heart, then we find Spiritism. And when we find Spiritism, we find others that is sharing the same thing. And then you think, oh, you are a spirit? And they say, no. And then you see that this truth, like the messages, comes to many religions, many part of the world, many different places, but it's this beauty of the consoler, of this Christ, of this spirituality that we have in us. And it is amazing to feel that, because I remember transforming, coming from another religion to this, how open mind, how clear I could see things, and how I could see other people seeing the truth in a different way, and being like almost to me like, oh, everybody was a spirit now, because they see exactly that I was questioning, and they're seeing, they're sharing and doing this. So gospel is a must thing for us to read and study, and the Kardec's book has so many information to us to help us, and it really gives us the strength that we need to continue forward, to really make us use our mind, the brain that God gave to us that we barely use, So it gives to us so we can you be rational and change and transform our lives and change the world.
You're right, Luciana. So, dear friends, of course, these teachings are not only to be understood, but to be practiced. We are revisiting this first part of the Gospel according to Spiritism to bring to us this strength. In a morning prayer that was recently, this week, uh, we had a message from Emmanuel talking about our religion. And it's fascinating. I want to just remind everybody that this message is worthwhile listening to because the book is not yet in English, published in English. But our dear Emmanuel says to us in these words, our religion. He says, if you have any question that your religious pathway is the right one, think about the strength of your religious pathway. Does it help you to forgive? Does it help you to be compassionate? Does it help you to not surrender to inertia, to laziness, to serve and to work always? Does it help you to love more? Does it help you to progress? If the answer is yes, then this is it. And certainly, Spiritism brings to us that understanding. We're not here on Fridays to share these teachings just out of knowledge, but to share with you the certainty, our true conviction that Spiritism changes our lives daily. And we can foresee that with this wonderful discernment that it brings to us, it will continue to polish us, to better us, to improve us. And we can see that in the near future will be much better because it made us be better people. In a world that is still conflicting, dwelling, in a world that is still allowing people to kill one another for material things for whatever reason, we need a direction. And tonight, we reinforce to you that Spiritism points out the direction, which is God, and explains why, without shame, without fear, without any hesitation. We know why we believe in God, and that's the strength of Spiritism. We would certainly love to be here more, but we need to wrap up because the good spirits are here. They are with you, and they are going to operate the passes onto us as we stay prayerful, wherever you are, in your home, in the hospital. Just feel the presence of the loving spirits as our dear friend Daisy leads us into the passes and prayer. Right, Daisy?
Let us then close our eyes and let us feel the presence of the spiritual guide and mentors who are at this very moment visiting our homes, who care for each and every one of us, as well as our family members. Let us feel that they embrace each and every one of us, bringing the healing medicine that we need at this very moment. Let us visualize their illuminated hands applying to us the medicine that we need, enveloping us in healing light that penetrates each of our cells in our bodies, traveling through our whole body, reaching organs and systems that need to, at this very moment, to be rebalanced, re-energized, and renewed. As we breathe in and out, we see that this light expands, enveloping our loved ones, those who are near and far, enveloping our homes, rescue entities that are needed, and also reaching those in the spiritual realm who accompany us throughout our days. We visualize that those who still yet don't know about the teachings of Spiritism or accept the love of Jesus in their lives are at this very moment invited to join in, to open their hearts and surrender to the infinite love of God. We visualize caravan of illuminated spirits coming from the highest realms, reaching places on earth where at this very moment there is much suffering. We visualize those caravans of light reaching those who are at this very moment facing all types of violence, physically, emotionally, spiritually. They embrace those who are suffering in hospitals, nursing homes, prisons, refugee camps, as well as those who will think that life is just passing and are involved in all types of addictions on earth. Let us visualize Master Jesus as the governor of our planet, sharing his light with all of us as we raise our thoughts to the creator of our lives. Dear loving God, we are so thankful because of your immense love to each and every one of us. You send us Master Jesus and the promised consoler, Spiritism, to provide us with the direction in our lives, to give us the strength, knowing that this life is just passing, that we are immortal spirits, and we are here to learn and to progress. Dear God, we thank those who have come before us, who have sacrificed their lives, those who are known and those whose names we don't even know, but because of them, we are here today. Those who have helped spread and codify Spiritism, those who have sacrificed their lives to exemplify the teachings of the gospel. And we ourselves, Father, tonight renew the commitment that we have with you to not only apply these teachings to our own lives, but to share it with the world through our words, deeds, and actions. Thank you, dear loving God, for the much that we received, and we receive much in this life for having access to this knowledge. And tonight with you, strengthening our faith in the certainty that you are the only direction in our lives. We then ask your permission to close this meeting of tonight. And so be it.
Thank you, friends, for being with us. Thank you, Slavik. Thank you, Leonie Varia. Thank you, Sol Souza, Paloma, Todd, Daniel, Pion, Maria Alice. Thank you, friends. If you have any questions, suggestion, recommendation, please do not hesitate in writing to us at cardiacradio@gmail.com. We wish you many blessings. And tomorrow morning, we have a morning praying at 11 a.m. We have a special live interview with Carol Bowman in one of her books and main works, Children's Past Lives. We hope you can join us then. Thank you, friends.